Let's cultivate our motivation. And recall that the disadvantages of anger are many, but anger is also related to clinging attachment. So one way to subdue our anger is also to subdue our attachment. Because the more attached we are to someone or something, the more we see that external object as the source of our happiness, then the more upset we become when we're separated from it, when it disappoints us, when it decays. So the more attachment we have, the more anger we're going to have as well. So it's good to look at how attachment functions in our mind. And just as anger is based on exaggerating and projecting negative qualities, attachment is based on projecting and sometimes exaggerating positive qualities. And again, all of this is done from the perspective of me, who happens to be the one and only arbiter of what is good and bad and pleasant and unpleasant. So we can see that the whole thing is really rather skewed. So the more we can think about attaining happiness from Dharma practice, from inner development, genuine Dharma practice here, not just highs, but through genuine transformation, then the easier it'll be to let go of the attachment to external things, because we become able to fulfill our needs and to experience pleasure without having to rely so much on external people and things that are beyond our control. And that lack of attachment towards other people gives us space to genuinely care about them without seeking to get something from them for our own ego purposes. And so that opens the door for genuine love and compassion. And of course, the more we can increase that genuine love and compassion, the more we'll be able to increase our bodhicitta and stabilize our bodhicitta. And then the easier it will become to do our actions motivated by bodhicitta. So with that kind of attitude, let's share the Dharma today. So at first, giving up attachment to external things sounds completely crazy. And especially when we talk about giving up attachment to other people, that sounds especially crazy because and then we get confused. How are we supposed to generate love and compassion for them if we aren't attached to them. Yeah. So we really have to see the difference between attachment and genuine care. They're quite different because attachment is based on projection, based on exaggeration. Okay, and attachment has lots of strings attached. And so that's why we get angry when things don't work out the way we want. Whereas with love, there aren't those strings. So our mind is much more accepting of what is. And there isn't that exaggeration and projection, expecting more from other people than they can give, or expecting them to be able to do things that they are unable to do. Yeah, so that all that false expectation leads to the clinging attachment, and then it leads to the disappointment and the pain, yeah, and thus to the anger. So it's important to look at that closely in our minds. Yeah. Whenever we feel upset with somebody, to ask ourselves, okay, what was I holding on to? What kind of notion was I holding on to? What kind of need am I expecting somebody else to fulfill for me that is not getting fulfilled, and I am now getting angry? And so how can I fulfill those needs? Or sometimes even how can I let go of some of those needs? Yeah, and not exaggerate the importance of some of my needs. So attachment is much more difficult to identify and thus to oppose, because generally in society, attachment is seen as good. And second, because we often feel very happy when our attachment is present and we're getting what we want. Yeah. And so, because of that, it's often much more difficult to notice attachment and also to see its disadvantages. Yeah, because when we feel good, who wants to look at the disadvantages of why we feel good? Yeah. So it's not that we should feel bad, and it's not that feeling good is a problem, and it's not that pleasure is a problem. Okay? The problem comes when we have an unrealistic view and thus unrealistic expectations, and thus attachment and clinging. Okay, so it's not the feeling of happiness that's the problem. It's how we relate to the feeling of happiness. Yeah. When we feel happy, we think that the happiness comes from the external object. Yeah. So happiness is in this sweet. Therefore, when I put the sweet in my mouth, I experience happiness because it has, happiness inside of it. Actually, it doesn't have happiness inside of us. Because if you don't feel like having a sweet and you put it in your mouth, then you don't feel happy. Okay? If it had happiness inside of it, any person all the time should experience happiness having a sweet. But that's not the case. Okay? So the happiness is not in the object. So that's one problem that we have. We think, the happiness is there. The happiness is in the other person. So as long as I'm near that person, I will experience happiness because the happiness, the pleasure is radiating from them into me. But is that your experience, that all the time, every single moment when you're with somebody who you are attached to, that you feel pleasure from being with them? Is that your experience? No. Yeah. You may love your friend dearly, but when you're exhausted, you want to be left alone. Yeah. You want to go to sleep. So we see that, we come to see that often the way we relate to people is we think there's pleasure or happiness in them and that we're going to get it by being near them. Yeah. But that's not the case at all, because sometimes we're near them and we experience a neutral feeling. Sometimes we're near them and we feel unpleasant and painful feelings. It's true, isn't it? Yeah, they call us names. They don't like our ideas. We want to eat Chinese food and they want to eat Indian food, and they're wrong and we're right. Okay. So, yeah, these are the kinds of things that come up because of the incorrect way in which we apprehend things and the incorrect way in which we think about them. Yeah. Like especially with jobs, and wanting to get a promotion, and you think, I get this new job and this new promotion, then I'll feel really happy, because they're noticing my qualities, they're noticing my abilities, my pay will go up, I'll have more money, this is a really good deal. Yeah. But then you get it, and then are you always happy in your new job? No. Yeah. You're not always happy because the happiness doesn't lie in the external object. The happiness comes about due to how we relate to something. It comes about to the state of our mind. It comes about due to our karma. Yeah. But not seeing this, then we run around and we're always grasping at external things. I gotta have this, and then I've got to get away from that. But the problem with pleasant things, our connection with wonderful people and pleasant things, is they always end in separation. Yeah, because whatever comes together must separate. Okay, so if we're quite attached to someone or something, when that separation comes about, we feel quite lost, yeah, and in a lot of pain because of that expectation that that thing, that person, is the source of our happiness. Yeah. And it's hard to understand because the whole society doesn't agree with this. Our entire society is built on the assumption that happiness and pain come from outside. Even though that's not our experience, that's the way we think things operate. Okay? So it's very valuable sometimes. When Buddha talked about the disadvantages of attachment, he wasn't trying to make us miserable, and he wasn't making up big fat lies. He was just saying, look at your own experience and decide for yourself. Yeah, so that's what we need to do. Yeah, check if what he said actually describes our experience or not. And if it does, then it gives you this feeling like, wow, here's somebody who understands how my mind and my life work better than I do. Maybe I should learn some more about what he says. This guy's onto something. Yeah. And so that's what, opens our mind to taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So that's why we always say refuge is something that grows the more you practice, because the more you understand your own mind, then at least, in many of our cases, we realize, gee, the Buddha described that. He knows he's really onto something here. And so that gives you the kind of faith that is based on understanding. That's not just blind faith. In the Pali tradition, the perfection of wisdom understands the general and specific characteristics of phenomena. It arises based on concentration and knowledge of the Four Truths, and clearly illuminates phenomena. Wisdom purifies all the other perfections, enabling them to serve as the foundation for the omniscient mind of a Buddha. So apparently the terminology is changed from all-knowing to omniscient by the time you get to Dhammapala's teachings. Wisdom frees ethical conduct from afflictions such as craving, recognizing the danger of sense pleasures in the householder's life. Wisdom knows the benefits of renunciation, jhana, or meditative stability, and nirvana. It steers joyous effort in a proper direction, enabling it to accomplish all virtue. Wisdom gives bodhisattvas fortitude while encountering others' wrongdoings and offensive behavior. Those with wisdom speak truthfully, have firm determination, lovingly care for the welfare of all beings, and maintain equanimity when serving and guiding them, and while still abiding within the vicissitudes of samsara. Okay? So that's how wisdom relates and supports all the other of the perfections in the Pali tradition. Yeah, wisdom's quite important, If you have compassion, but you don't have wisdom, again, we can create a whole lot of messes. So it's important to be able to combine wisdom with compassion. When I lived in France, we did a skit once, and it was about Mickey Mouse Bodhisattva. Okay, so Mickey Mouse Bodhisattva had a lot of compassion and no wisdom. So he was giving everything away that didn't belong to him, and everything away that did belong to him, out of compassion for those who lacked, but certainly without wisdom, because then the people he took it from were then going to suffer. Okay, so a gross display of compassion without wisdom, but it makes sense. To cultivate wisdom arising from learning, because there's three kinds of wisdom. The ones derived from learning. Sometimes they say hearing, because in olden times that's how you learned, is from hearing. Now, we have books, and it's realized also now that some people learn better from hearing, some people by seeing, and some people by doing. Okay, so learning encompasses all of those. If you hear hearing, it means learning. Okay. And then there's the wisdom arising from reflection or thinking or contemplation. And then third, the wisdom arising from meditation. So to cultivate the wisdom arising from learning, bodhisattvas fully study the 5 aggregates, 6 sources, 18 constituents, 4 Arya truths, 22 faculties, 12 links of dependent arising, 4 establishments of mindfulness, and classifications of phenomena. If you love categories with numbers, become a Buddhist. It will fulfill your need. Yeah. Bodhisattvas also learn worthy fields of knowledge that could be useful to sentient beings. So in the Sanskrit tradition, they talk about that too. In olden times, it was, grammar, poetry, logic, medicine, maybe rhetoric.
Astrology.
No, I don't think astrology. Well, anyway, but other ones, astrology could be included in there. And then, of course, nowadays there's other things to learn as well. So it doesn't mean that you get distracted by learning all these other fields and then don't have enough time for your practice. But it's meaning you have to, if you have a bodhisattva motivation, you have to be able to relate to people in your society. So you have to have some of the common knowledge and keep refreshed about what people are talking about. Nowadays, you have to have knowledge about all the lies. Yes, as it's not just nowadays, it's, this is society, isn't it? At all times, in all periods. Bodhisattvas cultivate the wisdom arising from thinking by reflecting on the specific characteristics of phenomena that they have studied. Then they engage in the preliminary portion of the wisdom arising from meditation, which is included under mundane kinds of full understanding. Here, bodhisattvas discern the 3 general characteristics of the aggregates: impermanence, nature of dukkha, and no self, and understand all internal and external phenomena as follows. This is mere name and form, which arise and cease according to conditions. There is no agent or actor. It is impermanent in the sense of not being after having been, unsatisfactory in the sense of oppression by changing, and not self in the sense of being susceptible to the unsusceptible, to the exercise of mastery. Through this understanding, bodhisattvas abandon attachment and lead others to do so too. They mature sentient beings' minds in the paths of the 3 vehicles, helping them to attain the jhanas, meditative liberations, concentrations, attainments, and mundane super-knowledges. They continue doing this until they reach the peak of wisdom and the qualities of the Buddha are in sight. Okay, so that's the preliminary portion of the wisdom arising from meditation. So it spans a whole lot. Yeah, big span there. So with all these things, even though we hear kind of what their characteristics are, what their definitions are, everything has a span. Okay? So we shouldn't try and, think, okay, it's just this and not that and not this. But all the qualities we develop, have a span in many ways, from superficial to profound, from deeply ingrained in our mind to barely noticed. Okay? So this is very important, I think, to see things as when we hear these descriptions, not to think of boxes, but to think of spans, and how sometimes the borders between one and the other are not so clear, or sometimes there are clear borders, but still, from this border to this border, there's a whole lot. Okay? It's kind of like if somebody says, I'm in America, then everybody says, oh, they're in America. But, they could be in a whole bunch of different places. Yeah, and it'd be experiencing many different things, even though they're in the same country, because the country is large. Okay, so the same kind of way. I'm talking about this to help us not make our ideas too much like boxes. Okay. So the wisdom arising from meditation may be spoken of. So that was the preliminary portion. So the actual wisdom arising from meditation can be spoken of in two ways: the 5 mundane super-knowledges and the 5 purifications. Purification of view, purification by overcoming doubt, purification by knowledge and vision of what is and is not the path, and purification by knowledge and vision of the way are, all these 5 purifications are mundane purifications. Purification by knowledge and vision is the supra-mundane knowledge of the 4 Arya paths. Okay? So there's, again, many stages. We went through some of these before, when last year when we talked about the path according to the Pali tradition. So it's okay. Okay, so this is around. Yeah, here it is, page 194, goes into those purifications that I just mentioned, 194 to 198, top of 198. Okay, so Dhammapala comments that the Visuddhimagga describes these topics for someone following the Shravaka or the hearer path to arhatship. Bodhisattvas should practice them with compassion, bodhicitta, and the skillful means of wisdom. In addition, bodhisattvas develop wisdom up to and including purification by knowledge and vision of the way. They must wait to attain purification by knowledge and vision. Okay, so purification by knowledge and vision of the way is not the same as purification by knowledge and vision. Okay. So before entering vision, because this last one, purification of knowledge and vision, this is the 4 Arya paths that realize nirvana in stages. So the path of a stream enter, a once returner, non-returner, and arhat. Before entering the Arya paths, bodhisattvas must skillfully balance their development of compassion and wisdom, and only when the paramis are complete do they enter the Arya paths and attain full awakening. In this way, their attaining nirvana will coincide with their full awakening. Okay, so in the case of the Pali Bodhisattva path, okay, you attain nirvana and the nirvana of an arhat and full awakening at the same time. Why? Because you have to develop all of the paramis fully before you enter into nirvana and full awakening. Why? Probably because if you entered into nirvana first, you would stay in nirvana. You wouldn't keep going until full awakening. So, and I'm not sure if in the Pali Bodhisattva path, maybe we'll come across it, but I can't remember now, if they say that, if they define the nirvana with and without remainder in the same way that the regular, it's usually defined in the Pali system. They might. Okay. Okay, then the perfections of unshakable resolve, which is from the Sanskrit tradition, and of determination, which is the Pali tradition. So the Sanskrit perfection of unshakable resolve and the Pali perfection of determination are similar. The perfection of unshakable resolve entails making strong aspiration and resolute determinations to do specific great deeds for the benefit of sentient beings. In the Sanskrit tradition, okay, so these are often in Tibetan translators will often call these prayers, and Chinese translators translate it as vows. Okay, and I chose unshakable resolves because I think that's more accurate. Praying is, wouldn't this be wonderful? But praying doesn't entail any kind of commitment on our own part to do something. It's just, may this come about, because the English word implies we just make the request, somebody else makes it happen. Okay, so that's why I don't think prayers is a good translation. Vows, again, in English, vow means something, we think of Catholic vows, thou shalt not, and everything's very restricted and heavy, and there's punishment if you don't keep your vow. So I don't think vow is such a good translation, again, because of the implications, that these words, have in English. So I don't, like many Dharma ideas, I don't think there's one single English word that is good. So, unshakable resolve. So a resolve is you're determined to do something, and it's unshakable. You're not going to falter, in your determination. Okay, but there's no thing of punishment implied or anything like that. It's something that is uplifting. When you make an unshakable resolve, you are uplifted by it. Okay? Whereas, many people think of vows as restricted. That's why you'll notice in the book, I don't use vows at all. Yeah, because I had a long discussion with a couple of friends who know Sanskrit, and the Sanskrit term, which is samvara, I think. It implies more like ethical restraints or an ethical code. Yeah, like that, not something that is a thou shalt not kind of thing that's being imposed on from outside. We also had a long discussion about this at one of our Western Buddhist monastics gathering. I don't know if any of you were there, and Bhikkhu Bodhi was talking quite a lot about how vows is not a good translation for even the 5 precepts or the monks and nuns' precepts, because it's much more like trainings. The idea is that we, in terms of our precepts, we're training to do certain behavior and training to abandon other behavior. Yeah, so it doesn't have the same connotation as vows. Okay. But anyway, here, unshakable resolves, we're not talking about trainings, but well, we are. I mean, you make a resolve and then you gradually, go in that direction and build that up because you feel so strongly about it. Okay, so in the Sanskrit tradition, these unshakable resolves include the 12 pledges of the Medicine Buddha, the 48 pledges of Amitabha Buddha, the 10 pledges of Samantabhadra, 7 of which are the 7 limb prayer. According to the Gandavyuha Sutra, the latter are to pay homage to all Buddhas, praise all Buddhas, make abundant offerings, confess destructive actions, rejoice in others' virtues, request the Buddhas to teach, request the Buddhas to remain in the world, follow the teachings of all the Buddhas at all times, benefit and live harmoniously with all living beings, and dedicate all merit to sentient beings. Okay, so those are the 10. The 7 of those are our 7 limb prayer. Okay, so that's the origin of the 7 limb prayer. And these are okay. So bodhisattvas make unshakable resolves that may not be actualized, such as promising to lead each and every sentient being out of suffering. Making such a pledge is not a pointless pursuit. Yeah, some people here, because the bodhisattvas, they really, they pledge and resolve to do all sorts of things that are totally impossible. Okay, I'm going to liberate every last sentient being in the hell realm by myself alone. Yeah, I mean, these kinds of things are impossible. But they say that it's not fruitless to make those resolves. Okay, in the West we say, well, why are you making a resolve to do something that's impossible? That's just impractical. It's stupid. Actually, it's not stupid, because what it does is it enlarges the scope of our mind. Yeah, because sometimes our mind, what we think we can do, we're like this, we really have tunnel vision. And to get us to really see what it is possible for us to do, making the resolves about what is even more than we can do helps us to get to what we can do. Okay? For example, I was once talking with one Tibetan Lama, and I was saying, sometimes we read the Lam Rim and we read these things and they seem so extreme. The pronouncements are so extreme. And he said, actually, that's the way in Tibetan culture you get somebody to go, you want them to go to the middle way, but they're here on one extreme. So he said the way to get them to get to the middle is you teach them this extreme, and then they'll kind of come to the middle. Yeah. And I was saying, gee, in Western culture, it's very different, because if you teach us this extreme, we take you literally. And we think things must be done exactly like that. And so then we try and do that, and we get, the whole thing all begins to seem too much for us. Okay? But here, this is a good example with the unshakable resolves, and sometimes making resolves that it's not possible, is that it opens your perspective and, gets you to what you can do. Okay? Make some sense to you? Yeah? Okay. So bodhisattvas make unshakable resolves that may not be actualized, such as promising to lead each and every sentient being out of the suffering of samsara. my goodness. Making such pledges is not a pointless pursuit. It strengthens our determination to be of whatever benefit we can to whatever sentient being is in need, regardless of the difficulties it may entail for us personally. Okay, so making these kind of even unrealistic resolves, helps us so that when we do encounter situations where we may be of benefit, we don't hesitate and say, oh, but ho ho. We, by the force of making these resolves, there's this energy and inner strength in us that then can come to the fore, where we can actually do things that we didn't think we were able to do before. Okay? Or to recognize opportunities to be a benefit that we didn't recognize before. So this is the purpose, of some of these, determined, unshakable resolves. As ordinary beings with limited physical and mental abilities, we have to assess what we can actually do before acting. Okay? Nevertheless, making such wonderful resolutions, even if they seem unrealistic, expands the scope and strength of our minds so that gradually we will be able to increase our capacity to benefit others. Okay? So, like they say, if you can't imagine it, you won't be able to do it. So sometimes these, unshakable resolves involve imagination of doing things that are way beyond our present capabilities, but the imagination leads us in that direction, and in that way increases our capabilities. Okay. The perfection of determination is the unshakable resolve to fulfill our promise to liberate sentient beings and to perfect the 10 paramis. It gives us the courage to remain steadfast in the practice, even when afflictive mental states threaten to dislodge us. Okay, so here we see another benefit of these unshakable resolves, is that then when we face obstacles, instead of just crumbling in the face of an obstacle, we remember, but I resolved to do this. Yeah, or in the presence of the Buddha, I said I would do that. So I can't just crumble the first time there's an obstacle. I have to try and deal with this obstacle and overcome it. So it gives us more confidence to deal with things when they happen. Okay? Because obstacles are going to happen on the path. We're in samsara. So of course obstacles are going to happen. Yeah, but when they happen, if, any time, you get sick or you have a problem in your life or somebody does something you don't like or there's a scandal or whatever, and you just go, then what's going to happen? Yeah, so we have to say, okay, yeah, obstacles are the nature of samsara. Obstacles are what I practice with. Yeah, see, we want everything to be nice and everything's going exactly the way we want it, and then we'll practice. But how are you going to overcome your afflictions when everything is the way you want? Okay, so these problems are where the actual Dharma practice lies. Okay, because when we have problems, that's when afflictions are going to arise, and actual Dharma practice means transforming our mind, which means being creative in how we work with our afflictions. Yeah. So if every time there's an affliction that rises in response to a problem we have, we just fall apart, yeah, then we're not going to be able to benefit ourselves, let alone benefit any other living beings.
How does that last statement apply to the Buddha's Pure Land, where there doesn't seem to be any problems or afflictions whatsoever?
Yeah, that's why they say, okay, that for some practitioners, they don't want to be born in the Pure Land. They want to be born in our world, because in many ways it's faster to accumulate merit and purify, and also to do the tantric practice in our world. But, you know, there's if in the Pure Land, you know, the external situation is very good, but I'm sure our afflictions will still manage to come up anyway. Yeah, even when we have a good situation in this life, our afflictions come, don't they? Yeah. So I don't know, maybe in the Pure Land, every once in a while, people start complaining about Amitabha. Yeah? Amitabha, I don't like the teaching schedule, you know.
My lotus is getting old. I want a new lotus.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the food appears naturally on the trees without having to grow, but you know, I'm gluten intolerant, so please have more trees that give me gluten-free food.
Can you attain Buddhahood?
Can you attain Buddhahood? They say you can attain Buddhahood, and some say you can attain Buddhahood in Amitabha's Pure Land. Some say you still must enter the, well, yeah, the official view is you must still enter the tantric path. But I imagine that from Amitabha's Pure Land you can then go to where you can receive those teachings and do that practice. Okay. So that's why, you know, bodhisattvas, whenever they have problems, they aren't dismayed. Yeah, they just see it as, yeah, this is what happens and this is my chance to practice. And they have the confidence, I can do this. Yes, this isn't something that's insurmountable. The Buddha had problems too before he became a Buddha. Yeah. And he wandered in samsara just like us. We probably hung out at the bar with the Buddha sometime in a previous life. Yeah, but the Buddha practiced and we kept going back to the bar. That's the difference. Okay. The above practices are shared by the Pali and Sanskrit traditions. The following ones are found in the list of perfections from one tradition, but not the others, although they are in fact practiced in both traditions. Okay, so first we have the three from the Sanskrit tradition, then we have three unique ones from the Pali tradition. Okay, so from the Sanskrit tradition, there's skillful means, power, and exalted wisdom, or pristine wisdom. So skillful means indicates the way in which Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, motivated by compassion, explain the teachings and adapt their behavior to best communicate with sentient beings who have unique needs and capacities. Skillful means also include Bodhisattva's ability to see all phenomena as empty, without abandoning sentient beings, and to their ability to abide in deep states of concentration without being hindered by attachment to rebirth in the form and formless realms. Okay, so here skillful means has several different meanings, okay? One is, and this is the meaning that people usually think of, but it's good if we could expand it and think of the other meaning. But the one people usually think of is how bodhisattvas, motivated by compassion, manifest in different ways, teach in different ways, guide in different ways, according to the unique needs and capacities of sentient beings. Okay? So sometimes as disciples, we get confused when our teacher gives us one advice and then gives our Dharma friend another advice that isn't the same as ours for the same thing. Yeah. So we were always dealing with, but Lama said, but Lama said this to this person, and Lama said something different to the other person, and something different to that person. And then everybody fights over what Lama said and what we should do, not realizing that Lama's going to say different things to different people because the way they think is different and what they need to hear is different. So Ajahn Chah explained it. He gave a very cute little story that I think illustrates this, because the purpose of telling different people different things is to get them all on the path to awakening. Okay, so Ajahn Chah gave the example, if you have a narrow path and there's a cliff on this side and a cliff on this side, if somebody's walking on this side, and they're too near the cliff, you say, go left, go left. Of course, the way you're looking at it, it would be go right, go right. Okay, so go right, go right. But if somebody's walking on this side of the road, too close to that cliff, they get the instruction, go left, go left. So the instruction looks the opposite, but actually they're trying to get them both away from the dangers they were facing and to the middle of the path. Okay? So this is important to understand, that our teachers may tell us different things, and they may tell us different things at different times. Yeah, but it's all trying to, get us to go in the direction we need to go. Okay. So that's one meaning of skillful means. Skillful means also includes the bodhisattva's ability to see all phenomena as empty without abandoning sentient beings. So sometimes the question comes, or mostly all the time it comes, at some point on the path, of how can you see sentient beings as empty and still work to liberate them? Okay? Now this question comes because we're mistaking emptiness to mean total non-existence. Okay? So sentient beings are empty, but being empty doesn't mean that they're already out of samsara, or that they have no pain, or that they don't exist. Okay? It means that when you analyze to find out who exactly they are, you can't find something that you can draw a line around. But when you don't analyze, then sentient beings appear to your mind. And they experience happiness and suffering. They live in samsara. They attain nirvana. Okay? So don't think that because sentient beings are empty, there's no way to guide them, or you don't need to guide them. Yeah, it's because they're empty and they don't realize that they have so much suffering and therefore need the guidance. And it's because they're empty of inherent existence that they're capable of changing and becoming Buddhas. Okay? So skillful means that you're able to put the two truths together. That when you're meditating and meditative equipoise, directly perceiving emptiness, there's no appearance of sentient beings, only emptiness appears. But when you're not in that meditative equipoise, then sentient beings appear like illusions. Remember? Yesterday we had space-like meditation and illusion-like meditation. So we have to, put both of those things together. Okay, so that's one meaning of skillful means. You can see phenomena as empty without abandoning sentient beings by just saying, well, they don't exist. Because they do exist. They don't exist truly, they don't exist inherently, but they do exist. Okay? Then another meaning of skillful means is for bodhisattvas to abide, to have the ability to abide in deep states of concentration, without being hindered by attachment to those same meditative absorptions. So remember we were talking about that for ordinary beings, it's very easy if you don't have strong renunciation or a strong determination to be free. When you attain the jhanas, the dhyanas, or the formless absorptions, there is a strong tendency to become attached to the bliss and not go further on the path. But here skillful means that bodhisattvas can attain all those different levels of meditative absorption, and they don't get attached to them. So that gives them a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility, because by means of many of those different levels of absorption, then they can gain the super knowledges and use those super knowledges to figure out how best to benefit sentient beings, and they can use their ability to go in and out of different meditative absorptions to increase their meditative flexibility and the power of their mind. Okay, so those are two more meanings of skillful means there. The Bodhisattva Bhumi, who's the author of that? Asanga. Okay, describes two sets of skillful means. Regarding the first, accomplishing all the qualities of a Buddha within themselves. Okay, so that's the name of the first set of skillful means. Accomplishing all the qualities of a Buddha within themselves. Bodhisattvas practice looking upon all sentient beings with compassion, taking rebirth and samsara due to compassion and wisdom, knowing the ultimate nature of phenomena, not abandoning beings in samsara, desiring the exalted wisdom of unsurpassed awakening, and spurring their enthusiasm with bodhicitta. Okay, so that's 6 right there. Regarding the second group, which is ripening all other living beings, so that first group, accomplishing all the qualities of a Buddha within themselves, so all those different qualities relate to what bodhisattvas have to generate in their own mind, to progress along the path and to benefit sentient beings. Okay? So they have to practice looking upon sentient beings with compassion, taking rebirth in samsara due to compassion and wisdom, knowing the ultimate nature of phenomena, not abandoning sentient beings in samsara, desiring the exalted wisdom of unsurpassed awakening, and spurring their enthusiasm with bodhicitta. Okay, so remember we talked about before that, part of the path is fulfilling our own aim and our own purpose. Yeah, so this is like things that we have, qualities we have to gain, and cultivate inside of ourselves that fulfill our own purpose and enable us to become awakened Buddhas. Then the second, ripening other living beings, is the skillful means that we have to cultivate in order to benefit other sentient beings directly, okay? So bodhisattvas cultivate the ability to teach sentient beings how to transform small actions into great virtue, to cause them, meaning sentient beings, to accomplish great roots of virtue without hardship, to eliminate anger in those who dislike the Buddha's doctrine, to encourage those with a neutral mind to enter into the Buddha's doctrine, to ripen the mind streams of those who have entered into the Dharma, and to cause mature sentient beings to attain liberation. So there's 6 there, so altogether a Sangha talks about 12 skillful means. Okay? So you can see the second list is, how we need to relate to sentient beings. Okay? So to teach, and so some of these we may even be able to start with on a small level now, just as some of the previous ones we can start cultivating now on a small level. Okay? So now we can start cultivating the ability to teach sentient beings how to transform small actions into great virtue. So how are you going to do that? What are you going to tell them?
Rejoice.
Rejoicing, good. What else?
Practice bodhicitta.
Practice bodhicitta. What else?
Thank you, good qualities.
Yeah. Yeah, your motivation's very important. Yeah, having a good motivation. And dedication, but also if you've studied the chapter on karma, then you know different factors that help make karma weightier and heavier. So you'll teach those to those sentient beings, so then they can practice those and, transform small actions into ones that are bigger. And then, and then you teach them the antidotes to anger so that they then don't destroy their virtue. Okay, cause them to accomplish great roots of virtue without hardship. Okay, so what are you going to tell them there? Yeah, motivation and?
Joyous effort.
Joyous effort.
Cultivate fortitude.
Huh?
Cultivate fortitude.
Fortitude, yeah. And here's where also rejoicing would come in, wouldn't it? Okay. Eliminate anger in those who dislike the Buddha's doctrine. What are you going to do for those people? How are you going to help them?
Show them the disadvantages of anger.
But they're angry at the Buddha's doctrine. If you start preaching to them about the disadvantages of their anger towards the Buddha's doctrine, when they think they're right and you're wrong, they're not going to listen to you.
Show them the similarities. Show them the similarities between the Buddhist doctrine and what they already believe.
Yeah, that's how you're going to do it. Okay, so if somebody has aversion to the Dharma, yeah, you show them what's similar between what they already believe and what the Buddha's taught. Okay, and you don't point out the differences. So, because that's just going to aggravate them. So, for example, some years ago, you may have driven by the little Mormon church?
Mennonite
Church. Sorry. Mennonite Church on Spring Valley Road. So they had an open house. I think it was the first year we were here. Yeah, did any of you go with me? I went. Yeah, and it was really nice. And the pastor's wife said to me, do you believe in God? And I didn't say, no, we wouldn't believe in that stuff, because that would not have worked. So I said, I completely didn't answer the question about God. I said, we teach about loving sentient beings, about having good ethical conduct and not harming others. Our teachings talk about compassion for people who are sick, for people who are poor. We talk about having forgiveness for those who have harmed us. And, these we talk about generosity. Yeah. So I explained, these kinds of things. And she was nodding her head and smiling. Yeah. Whereas if I had started out saying, no, we don't believe in God, and we don't believe there's a creator, we believe in karma, we believe in rebirth, that would not have helped that person at all. Okay? So also with your parents, it's a very good way to talk to parents and relatives. Point out the similarities between the Dharma and the values these people already have. Yeah, so when you're not taking out the trash and mowing the lawn around the anthills, then you can do this, and it makes a good impression on them. Okay. Encourage those with a neutral attitude to enter into the Buddha's doctrine. So how are you going to do that?
Talking about the benefits of practicing the Dharma.
Okay, you can talk about the benefits of do you use the terminology practice the Dharma? They don't know what practice the Dharma is.
Talk about the benefits of eliminating the suffering and practicing good qualities.
Yeah. Okay. How about being more specific, talking about how to overcome anger? Yeah. How to overcome jealousy. Because you can talk about those things and not mention one specifically Buddhist word at all. So if you want to bring people into Buddhism, don't hit them with a lot of foreign terminology. Practice the Dharma. What's that? Yeah, benefit good qualities. What are those? Tell them about something that's concrete that will interest them. Yeah.
Tell them.
Oh, yeah, you need the mic.
You could try to show them that Buddhism is cool.
How are you going to show them that Buddhism is cool?
Well, try to relate what's happening in their culture and pick up on certain things that might be similar to Buddhism in the popular culture.
Mm-hmm. Like what?
Like rap.
Like rap.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of Dharma already in rap.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I only hear about the misogyny.
You're listening to the wrong stuff. Punk music too. Punk music too. Been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, give us old fogey some quotes.
Did you just say fogey?
Yeah, we're old fogies, We're decrepit seniors who don't understand anything. So give us a citation from rap that is Dharma.
There's Blackalicious. Blackalicious definitely goes with that. Do you know Blackalicious?
No, I just want a citation. I don't care who said it.
I haven't thought about lyrics for 2 months. I can't. I'll email you something. Oh, Wu-Tang Clan for sure, but that's not a good example. But I'm not saying you have to relate to the rap that's already there. One can rap. One can rap about the Dharma. One can do anything about the Dharma. If it's about relating to people who don't know the Dharma, why would you limit yourself to already Dharma-used mediums? Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
You agree with me?
100%.
Yeah.
It's used in Hong Kong too.
Okay.
There was a woman who rapped in front of all the women.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I've heard some people, I heard of one Dharma center where they wanted to start having raves in order, to do something that was appropriate for the young people so that they would come to the Dharma center. What do you think about that? Does that fall into what you're saying?
Yeah, you don't need drugs to rave.
I don't know.
How to have a good time without drugs now.
That's true.
Yeah, like healthy is cool. So it should be cool, healthy things, I think.
I remember in middle school we had like all night like sleepover type things. They were like dances, but they went all night. That's a rave, I guess. But the rave that I'm thinking about is not gonna work for Dharma.
Yeah.
Aside from that, Gashi Dawdle is releasing a mixtape sometime, so got that to look forward
He
to.
does what?
He said he was joking about releasing a mixtape, like songs.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So using, contemporary media is very good, but we have to also be quite careful. Because the reason I was pushing you on this is because I've heard some people say, to bring new people into the Dharma, then, I'm going to, they're smoking dope, so I'm going to smoke dope with them and I'll be cool with them. And then we can talk about Dharma when we're both loaded. Or I'm going to, go to the bar and drink with other people because if I don't drink, then they're going to think Buddhism is very puritanical. But if I drink with them, then they'll think that I'm one of them, and then I can talk about the Dharma to them. What do you think about that?
I think those are two different things.
What are two different things?
Implying that substances must be abused to enjoy medium. That's like saying there's people that drink whiskey and read. So in order to write Dharma books, you also have to be on the side of drinking whiskey. That's entirely not true. There's people that smoke weed to listen to music, but there's people who listen to music sober. Mm-hmm. There's people who do everything sober.
Okay.
So why wouldn't you be able to touch on any medium without the use of a drug?
Right. But what about the people who say, if I'm not using drugs and intoxicants, people will think that I'm not cool. And so they won't like Buddhism because of that.
That sounds like an issue of self-confidence. That sounds like a different type of problem here. Mm-hmm. That literally sounds like personal problem.
Okay, so somebody's personal problem that they can't stand to be different than their friends.
I imagine it would be hard to change anybody's mind if you're not a firm and self-confident person in the first place.
Uh-huh. So what are you saying then about using the examples of intoxicants?
I'm saying you don't need to pigeonhole yourself to anybody else's way of being in order to get them over, in order to foster an interest within them.
Okay.
Like,
so I don't need to become a biker in order to get bikers interested in the Dharma.
no, you just have to be an interesting person in the first place. Like, because people aren't bikers aren't bikers. Bikers are people.
Yeah.
People who like hip hop aren't just people who like hip hop. They're people predominantly. You connect with people from the human basis. I imagine that's something like what the Buddha was doing, going all across India. He wasn't looking at people and going like, oh, you're the wrong type of person, so I'm not even going to try to teach Dharma to you. He was teaching Dharma to people based on where they were, based on how they were, like telling one person a set of advice and telling another person a set of entirely different advice.
But he didn't have to dress like them in order to do that,
No, why would
or
he?
live like them in order to do that.
That's being a fogey. That's what I know as a fogey.
Fogey, not fogey.
One and the same.
Okay, what do you think, Paul?
Well, I think it's about balance. You know, I'm not a monk, but I've taken a more stronger austerities in the last number of years compared to how I used to live. And I find, you know, I wouldn't go around dressed in immaculate white and preaching good values. You know, try to meet people halfway. So if I'm within a human community, rather than having a lot of drinks, I'll go to a household and have one drink and stop it there. But in that way, I'm not, you know, I'm not able to relate with them just by trying, you know, being on a higher point where I'm not drinking, but I'm having one drink. So I find like meeting halfway in that kind of way, I feel is a good.
So why do you need to have one drink?
Well, like,
he says you don't need to have a
I mean,
drink.
like,
you
you
meet
know,
them on a
when you have
human
like
level.
if there's like a glass of wine being offered, rather than refusing it, you're going to have one rather than not at all.
Why not refuse it?
Well, I find like you're having one drink isn't going to cause intoxication.
Yeah, but why not say I don't like it? If people are serving you, you know, if you're vegetarian and they serve you a steak, do you eat the steak?
No.
So if they're asking you, you know, to drink some wine, why can't you say I don't like it or I don't want to?
I think for personally where I am at right now, I would have one drink, and it'd be a way to share in that.
You should have half of a steak also.
A social sacrament. What's that?
You should have half of a steak if you're a vegetarian too, because that you know, it's the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
And if they're watching porn afterwards, you should watch a little porn with them.
I feel porn and alcohol are slightly different. Like having one drink compared to having one little peek at porn, I feel like they're a bit different.
Oh, yeah? How?
Well, you know, like I said, one drink doesn't really get you intoxicated. But I see your point, you know, that things
Well,
can
one
get...
porn thing, you know?
Yeah, things can slide. Yeah, there's that potential. I hear
Yeah.
you. Yep.
But what about this whole thing of confidence, what he's talking about? Of having the confidence to be different, you know, than the people that you're around.
I guess I'm just trying to communicate like a balance, like a middle way. That's what I'm trying to say.
Uh-huh.
But that middle way can slide. There's a risk of that. And selling
okay.
out, you could say.
Okay. What do you think?
No opinions yet.
No opinions yet.
So I'll keep going.
Okay. I want some feedback before you leave. Okay. You took the 5th precept, you know.
Oh yeah. What you say is a lot of the arguments that slip in my head. So I'll make a point and then I'll share it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, as you realize, I will push you. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Ripen the mind streams of those who have entered the Dharma. How are you going to do that? I would say the UU class, actually, going back to the previous one, you know? how to encourage those with a neutral attitude to enter the Buddha's doctrine. I would say the UU class is a very good way for that. How about ripen the mind streams of those who have entered the Dharma?
Also
Yeah.
my students. Debating with them like this.
Debating like this, pushing with them. Okay, what else?
I think for me, it's walking your talk with them. I get more inspired now that I'm in the Dharma, watching my teachers embody the practice. So it gets out of my head and it gets into my heart. So being a real, just walking your talk with the Dharma, I think really inspires people who know what you're walking, and then can resonate with that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
For me, that relates both to the neutral people and those who have entered in terms of modeling the behavior, and in terms of how strict what you might model in those different situations might be different. But going back to in terms of the idea of not drinking at all, that sends a strong message of modeling about what's possible and what's not needed for happiness.
Yeah.
In terms of I don't need that to be happy and be here and be comfortable and be able to relate to you with an open mind that can still have fun and not feel excluded because I'm not taking part of that. There's such a power in modeling that and letting people know you don't have to do it just because you think you have to.
Yeah. Yeah, and just modeling that you can be a happy person, you can have a good sense of humor, but without doing some of those other behaviors.
Not a crutch.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
One thing I would do is to ask them questions about the meaning or how they apply some teaching of the Dharma. So if they become the teacher, you always learn more. They always learn more than listening to me or somebody else.
So.
Encourage them. You're gonna hit.
You're gonna what? Hit
You're
them?
gonna hit obstacles once
Yeah.
you get into the Dharma. So encouraging them.
Oh, so when they hit obstacles, encouraging them, yeah. What about the obvious one of teaching them? Leading meditations, leading discussion groups. Nobody's mentioned the obvious things.
That, on top of that, too, is, I think it was with Fortitude that we taught not to make it too easy for the students, to teach it a bit more elaborated.
Yeah, so challenge the students. Yeah, not just encourage them. Yeah. And encourage doesn't mean baby them, by the way. Huh?
Unless they need it. You teach differently to different people.
Yeah, I don't know that I really baby people, but my teachers don't baby people usually.
Babies, not cats.
Yeah, we baby the cats. Yeah.
I think that helping people, or just, I don't know, having a daily practice and studying the Lam Rim, I think are the things that ripen the mind stream.
Yeah, so encourage them to do that. I didn't realize that we're over time, so we should stop. Oh, we didn't get the requisite number of pages done. Oh, no, we went to. Yeah, we did pretty well.
You didn't do the last one.
Okay, and cause mature sentient beings to attain liberation. That's when you have to drag them. No, I'm joking. Come on, you're almost there. You could do it. You could do it. I think dragging them happens at the beginning. And once they get a taste of the Dharma, then you don't have to drag so much.